clogs to clogs in 3 generations. This Old English proverb means that the first generation earns capital, the second generation multiplies it, and the third generation squanders it. This saying perfectly describes the fate of the Gucci dynasty, which was portrayed in the film House of Gucci. The film's narrative begins in 1978. A young, attractive Italian woman, Patricia Reggiani, works as an office manager in a small transportation company owned by her stepfather, Fernando Reggiani. However, this is where the film starts to diverge from reality. In truth, by 1978, Patricia had already been bearing the famous surname of her husband, Maurizio Gucci, for several years, and had a child with him. Moreover, Patricia never worked for her stepfather. There was simply no need, as she already lived a life of luxury unconcerned with financial matters. She came from a very poor family, but when her stepfather, successful entrepreneur Fernando Reggiani, married her mother Silvana, Patricia's life changed dramatically. Patricia started wearing mink coats and expensive jewelry to school, and a few years later, as a teenager, she began driving luxury cars. Patricia epitomized the saying, "from rags to riches." In her attempts to distance herself from the unpleasant experiences of her impoverished childhood, she began to view less affluent people as second-rate and undeserving of her attention. Conversely, the elite industrialists and the ruling class of Milan saw Patricia as an upstart without noble lineage, who frivolously squandered her stepfather's money. To gain higher social status, Patricia needed to marry a wealthy heir from an influential family. Patricia Reggiani and Maurizio Gucci met at a party in 1970. Both were 23 years old at the time. Contrary to the film, Maurizio was not substituting for a bartender that evening. The vibrant, cheerful beauty in a red dress caught Maurizio's eye. He tried to woo Patricia, but was initially rebuffed. She had no idea who he was and assumed the young man in the old car was just another unsuccessful suitor. However, once Patricia learned that Maurizio was the heir to the Gucci fashion house, she immediately showed interest. Maurizio fell head over heels in love with Patricia and proposed to her on their second date. Such was the power of Patricia's charms. The history of the House of Gucci begins with Maurizio's grandfather, Guccio Gucci. At the end of the 19th century, Guccio's parents ran an unsuccessful hat-making business. Not wanting to follow in the footsteps of his family's failing venture, Guccio left home at 18 and found work as a sailor, eventually making his way to England. There, he was fortunate to secure a job at London's prestigious Savoy Hotel. The hotel's records don't detail his exact role, with some sources describing him as a dishwasher, others as a porter, and some as a waiter. Regardless, what's certain is that Guccio was deeply impressed by the affluent guests and their luxurious silks, jewels, leather suitcases, bags, hat boxes, and other everyday accessories. Guccio possessed both business acumen and ambition, prompting him to join the world of high fashion. He conceived the idea of opening his own store in Florence, offering high-quality leather suitcases. In 1921, he brought his vision to life. Initially, he operated as a reseller, using his savings to buy premium leather goods to sell to tourists. These items were reliable, well-crafted bags and suitcases sold at reasonable prices. After establishing his business, he decided to diversify by opening a small workshop behind his store to produce unique items in addition to the imported ones. Guccio was known for his impeccable sense of taste, reflected in everything he sold. Over time, Gucci's leather goods became highly popular and coveted among the elite, making further business expansion inevitable. Guccio had 6 children, but he entrusted the business to only 3 of them. Aldo Gucci joined the family business in 1925. Initially, he handled simple tasks in the store, mainly cleaning and arranging products on the shelves. Eventually, he was promoted to the position of salesman, which he managed skillfully, charming wealthy young customers with ease. Among his brothers, Aldo stood out for his exceptional business acumen. Another brother, Vasco, took charge of production. Vasco passed away in 1974, before the events depicted in the film, leaving no heirs. The youngest brother, Rodolfo, was not interested in the family business. He dreamt of becoming a film actor.
Maurizio said you used to be an actor?
Rodolfo achieved his dream starring in one of the acclaimed masterpieces of early Italian cinema, the 1929 film Rails. He later became famous for his comic roles, with his hilarious expressions and antics drawing comparisons to Charlie Chaplin. However, none of Rodolfo's subsequent films achieved the same success as Rails. The Second World War drastically changed the film industry, and early sound films soon eclipsed silent cinema, leaving Rodolfo without major roles. For the sake of his wife, he asked his father for a position in the family business. Aldo, who always insisted that the business remain family-owned, persuaded their father to accept Rodolfo. Guccio observed his son's work for a year and, to his surprise, was very pleased. Rodolfo proved to be diligent, loyal, and attentive to the business's challenges, demonstrating his reliability. On September 26, 1948, Rodolfo's son was born. He named him Maurizio, after his stage name. Regarding the workers' attitude towards the Gucci enterprise, Tuscan leather craftsmen considered Gucci to be the most reliable employer, providing confidence in the future regardless of market fluctuations. It was like working for the government, said one of the artisans. By the early 1950s, owning a Gucci bag or suitcase signified the owner's impeccable style and taste. Princess Elizabeth, the future Queen of England, visited the Gucci store in Florence, as did Eleanor Roosevelt, Elizabeth Taylor, and Grace Kelly. Rodolfo's connections in the film industry brought new clients, establishing the Gucci brand as one of the first symbols of European status. In 1953, just 15 days after the opening of the New York store, Guccio Gucci died of a heart attack. He was 71. That evening, he had planned to go to the cinema with his wife. The doctor said that Guccio's heart simply stopped like an old clock, but his business continued to thrive. The Gucci name was embraced in America just as warmly as it was in Italy. His sons worked diligently, married, and gave him grandchildren who would one day take their places in the family company. It's said that Guccio would always say when a grandchild was born, "Let him smell a piece of leather. This is what his future will smell like." Thus, slowly but surely, the House of Gucci conquered the world, leading up to the events depicted in the film. Just like in the movie, Rodolfo Gucci immediately disliked his son's girlfriend. However, while the film portrays him as considering her a gold digger, in reality, as mentioned earlier, Patricia was primarily interested in status, with money being a very pleasant addition. Despite his father's disapproval, Maurizio married Patricia. They tied the knot in 1972. Rodolfo was furious. He disowned Maurizio and threw him out of the house. However, Maurizio didn't go to work as a truck washer in Patricia's stepfather's company. In the film, everyone constantly urges Maurizio to lead the family business. Maurizio in turn claims that he doesn't need it, intending instead to become a lawyer and work in a law firm. Yet, inexplicably, he is washing trucks. Watching the film, you just want to shout, "You fool, just get involved in the family business." But in reality, Maurizio wasn't a fool in this regard. He always wanted to be part of the family business, just like his cousins. The quarrel with his father could have shattered these plans, and he might have ended up washing trucks as shown in the movie. However, in reality, Aldo immediately came to his aid. Aldo recognized potential in Maurizio that he didn't see in his own children. He invited Maurizio to New York and took him under his wing. In reality, no one had to persuade Maurizio to join the family business. The time Maurizio and Patricia spent in the US was the happiest period of their lives. The newlyweds led an active social life, hosting extravagantly expensive parties even by New York standards. Patricia was a constant presence at galas and celebrations, becoming one of Jackie Kennedy's closest friends. She was drawn to wealth, fame, and media attention. Her famous words are well known: "I'd rather cry in a Rolls Royce than be happy on a bicycle." Aldo Gucci saw in Maurizio the person who could take the company to the next level. He eagerly mentored his nephew, sharing his invaluable experience. Aldo was a genius marketer with incredible charisma and a broad vision. He was the true driving force behind the brand. In the scene where Aldo talks with Patricia, he mentions that the Gucci family were renowned saddlers in the Middle Ages. In reality, this is a myth that appealed to the elite, and Aldo actively promoted it. This underscores Aldo's competence. He understood customers, knew how to please them, and could embellish the history where necessary. Aldo taught Maurizio all these nuances of the family business. The film also hints at Aldo seeing something in Maurizio that he didn't see in his own sons. However, in the movie, Aldo behaves rather oddly, placing his nephew in the role of external relations coordinator without properly training him. The lack of scenes showing Aldo passing his knowledge to Maurizio makes it seem like Rodolfo decided to reconcile with his son only because he felt his own end was near. In reality, it was Rodolfo, seeing how Maurizio was gaining experience under Aldo's guidance, that changed his attitude towards his son. He realized he needed to respect Maurizio's choices and give him his blessings to marry Patricia. To apologize, Rodolfo went to New York and bought the newlyweds an apartment on Fifth Avenue in the Olympic Tower. Father and son forgave each other and grew closer than ever before. Rodolfo Gucci died of prostate cancer in 1983. After his father's death, Maurizio inherited his 50% stake in the company, becoming the majority shareholder. He promptly returned to Milan with his family. Maurizio had a distinct vision for the future of Gucci. At that time, the brand produced a wide range of products including clothing, perfumes, accessories, and even cars. However, Maurizio aspired to transform the family name into a symbol of luxury, style, and elegance again. He believed the company needed to refocus on exclusivity, eliminate cheaper items from production, and concentrate on high fashion. Maurizio had no intention of listening to Aldo's advice or considering the opinions of his cousins. This led to a fierce internal conflict within the family. There was a notable instance where 18 lawsuits involving the Gucci name were being processed simultaneously in New York and Milan. Aldo's three sons, Giorgio, Paolo, and Roberto, were not thrilled with Maurizio's successes, especially Paolo. In the film, Paolo Gucci is depicted as the most inept family member, utterly lacking in style and taste. For those who might not recognize him, Paolo is played by a heavily made-up Jared Leto. In the movie, Aldo considers his son an idiot, and Rodolfo calls him the triumph of mediocrity. However, in reality, Paolo was not short on talent. He was often seen as the most creative of Aldo's children. As a young boy, Paolo worked in his Uncle Vasco's factory, where his design talent began to shine. His ideas were put into production and soon evolved into a complete line of Gucci products. Paolo's daring color and design choices eventually helped Gucci move beyond its traditional shades of brown. He even co-designed the company's iconic logo featuring two interlocking G's. In the movie, to maintain his portrayal as an idiot, they didn't mention his talent. However, Paolo had a lack of diplomacy. He showed little deference to clients and business partners. Against his grandfather Guccio's principles, Paolo grew a mustache, something Guccio despised, as he could not stand men with facial hair. In 1980, Paolo was fired from the family business for creating designs for his own brand, Paolo Gucci. Afterward, he had numerous conflicts and legal battles with his relatives. On one occasion, Paolo brought a tape recorder to a financial meeting claiming the negotiations were dishonest and that he didn't trust anyone. This led to him being beaten with his own tape recorder and thrown out of the meeting in front of his father. This humiliation fueled Paolo's desire for revenge against his father. He ousted Aldo from the company in 1984 with help from Maurizio. Paolo reported his father to the U.S. tax authorities for tax evasion. In January 1986, Aldo Gucci was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison at the age of 81. In the film, it's shown that Patricia and Maurizio tricked Paolo by promising him a fashion show for his clothing line, only to later accuse him of illegal use of the family brand.
Copyright holder. I am the copyright.
However, in reality, Patricia was more interested in parties and high society life than in business. In reality, Patricia didn't involve herself in the business at all. It was Maurizio who agreed with the eccentric designer, Paolo, to develop a line of new bags and accessories. But literally a day before the new store's opening, Maurizio unilaterally revoked his permission to use the Gucci logo in the store and on the products. During the store's grand opening in front of guests and the press, the police raided the building. Paolo was detained and the products were confiscated. This incident led to a rift between Paolo and Maurizio, which lasted till the end of their lives. In the movie, we see Patricia calling the fraud and charlatan Pina on a live show. In reality, Patricia and Pina met at a resort on the famous volcanic island of Ischia in the Mediterranean Sea. Pina did indeed practice fortune-telling for socialites and the wives of aristocrats. But with Patricia, they became true friends. Patricia saw in Pina someone who could recognize her status and understand her. Interestingly, it wasn't just Patricia who was close to Pina. Maurizio also had a close relationship with her. He was very superstitious and often listened to the fortune-teller's advice. However, when it came to business, Maurizio made his own decisions. He managed to eliminate all competitors for the right to run the company, yet he never learned to manage the company effectively. Through the foreign investment firm Investcorp, he bought out the shares of all his relatives. It was important for Maurizio to remain anonymous. Had his cousins known he was behind the purchases, they would have refused to sell their shares. When they approached Aldo, he had no choice but to sell his stake since his children had already parted with their shares. When Aldo discovered that his nephew was behind this, it was a great shock to the old man. It was Aldo who initially insisted on accepting Rodolfo into the company, then persuaded Rodolfo to accept Maurizio, and subsequently, it was Aldo who taught his nephew all the intricacies of the business. Less than a year later, Aldo passed away. In total, Investcorp spent $135 million to buy out the shares of all the Gucci family members. Maurizio became the CEO of Gucci. However, ousting his relatives from the company was one thing. Making it prosperous and profitable was another challenge altogether. He changed the company's policy by canceling franchises, closing several stores, and reducing the product range by 2/3. Despite his ambitious plans, Maurizio's efforts to transform the Gucci brand failed. Discontinuing the brand's use on small items which had previously generated tens of millions of dollars deprived Gucci of its main source of income. The company could no longer pay its employees, which was only part of the problem. The real catastrophe was Maurizio's extravagant lifestyle, which led to bankruptcy and a $40 million debt. Maurizio asked for a 6-month extension to restart sales, but the investors were unwilling to wait. They were losing money, and by September 1993, Maurizio had to sell all his shares to the investors. However, he managed to pay off his debts, became financially independent, and had $8 million left from the sale of the company. Maurizio had plans to enter the gambling business and wanted to build a casino in Switzerland, but these plans never materialized. While Maurizio was engaged in dismantling his ancestors' company, he also shattered his own marriage. In 1985, Maurizio packed a small suitcase and told Patricia he was going on a business trip. He never returned home. Maurizio asked a close friend to visit Patricia and conveyed to her that he was initiating their divorce. Then, after Maurizio began seeing a new woman, Patricia appeared to have lost her mind with jealousy. She decided to get revenge for the offense. Patricia hired Benedetto Ceraulo, the owner of a small pizzeria who needed money to cover his debts. He, in turn, hired a former car mechanic, Orazio Cical. On March 27, 1995, Cical fired 4 bullets at Maurizio Gucci on the doorstep of his Milan home. The final shot was fatal. The bullet struck the fallen businessman directly in the temple. Through her friend Pina, Patricia provided the killers with $365,000. Patricia immediately became one of the main suspects, but the investigation lacked serious evidence of her involvement in the murder. The only indirect clue that could be interpreted as evidence was a note in Patricia's diary. She wrote the word paradise on the day of Maurizio's murder, but not in Italian as in the film, rather in Greek. Less than 3 hours after Maurizio Gucci's death, Patricia sent a written notice to evict Paola Franchi, her former husband's lover, from their luxurious Milan apartment. Patricia and her daughters lived in this apartment for the next 2 years until her arrest in 1997. Throughout this time, she staunchly maintained her innocence and calmly attended her husband's funeral on April 3, 1995. After several months of clarifying all the circumstances of the case, in November 1998, Patricia Reggiani was sentenced to 29 years in prison. In 2000, she nearly succeeded in having her sentence overturned, citing a brain tumor removal surgery she underwent in 1992, which affected her mental state and contributed to thoughts of killing her husband. The Milan Court of Appeal held an emergency session but only found grounds to reduce her sentence by 3 years. In the same year, as an additional effort to influence the court, Patricia staged a suicide attempt, but guards intervened promptly when she attempted to tie a sheet into a noose. By 2005, Patricia had abandoned all attempts to alter her fate and accepted her status as a prisoner. From then on, her behavior was exemplary, and the prison administration even allowed Patricia to keep a pet ferret in her cell. Despite seeking early release for a long time, Patricia refused to leave prison when offered the chance. In 2011, she declined, stating, "I have never worked before and I am not going to start now," when offered to exchange her remaining sentence for community service. In total, Patricia spent approximately 18 years behind bars and was released for good behavior in October 2016. The court ruled that despite the proven murder and completion of her sentence, Patricia Reggiani still retained the right to receive $1.47 million annually from Maurizio Gucci's estate. Legal experts clarified, the murder occurred more than 2 years after this agreement and is irrelevant to its execution. From a legal standpoint, everything here is logical and correct, while other considerations fall within the realm of morality and ethics, beyond the court's jurisdiction. As the current leadership of Gucci has no familial ties to the brand's founders, the company had no objections to the film's creation. On the contrary, the creators of House of Gucci were granted access to archival documents to accurately recreate the wardrobe and props of that era. However, descendants of Aldo Gucci expressed dissatisfaction with the portrayal of their family by Ridley Scott on the big screen. Regarding Patricia Reggiani's reaction to the film, it was mixed. She was pleased that her life story became public and sparked significant viewer interest. However, she was disappointed that neither the screenwriter, director, nor Lady Gaga, who portrayed her, consulted with her. Lady Gaga, for her part, explained that she never intended to meet the prototype of her character, believing Patricia was simply seeking any opportunity to appear in the press. Thank you for watching the video to the end. I hope you had a good time. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You'll discover plenty of other captivating videos waiting for you there.